What's up, guys? Alright, so we have here, this is my personal cart. This is a 2000 Club Car Turf 2 XRT. This is the gas version. It has a big ass aluminum box on it. And you can see here we have manually released tailgate clamps. This one here had some modifications to it done before I got it, so I'm going to be restoring some of it back to its original glory. One of those things being I'll be fixing the seats here on it. We have we're missing the seat back cushion and vinyl for this particular seat. This seat here was, when I got it, wasn't solid. This is actually a Club Car DS seat bottom, which does fit on the Turf 2s. I think they even fit on the Turf 1s. It's the same seat. It just doesn't have the grab frame that you lift up. You can see this frame here is completely separate from the seat base itself. So it's just a plastic seat bottom here. And then I bought the gray vinyl that goes on the Turf 2s and the Turf 1s, the utility carts basically, and just reupholstered it, recovered it, so now it's original. Here we have the back original. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably end up replacing this one and building a new one for here, but putting some thicker foam, because they're really not that thick and they're not that comfortable at all. So they're basically utility carts, and they're meant to be used for hauling dirt and other types of cargo, gravel, whatever. And they're used on golf courses. I know the last golf course I worked at had a few of these, but they weren't the lifted style. See, this is the factory lifted version. That's why they call it the XRT. Had a little crash with a tree, and we have a few issues on the front here. The headlights are factory. They come this way. It's not an Ingersoll Rand. It is a Club Car, but Ingersoll Rand, I guess, is a parent company to Club Car, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I don't pay attention. I really don't care. This one did come with the factory hour meter and fuel gauge. Turn the key on, and you can see this one does have 166.1 hours. I really don't think that's accurate, because I've used it for more than that, so I don't know how accurate that gauge is. I really don't care. I service it once a year anyway, regardless. This one has the manual dump box, so there is a lever right under here. You grab. I try to do this with one hand because it is heavy. You lift, and it has a two-stage locking mechanism, so it'll lock into a lower height or into a higher height, which it is in now. The problem with this one is, you can see that somebody added a 2-inch receiver trailer hitch here, and when you drop the tailgate, if you can't tell, it does mar it up and it gets in the way, and the tailgate doesn't open properly. So dumping is a bit of an issue. So, but that's going to come off, because I don't use that type of stuff anyway. I don't have any use for a trailer hitch on this thing. I had to put a starter generator in it. The starter generator that was in here was toast. The armature was a bit weak, and I put brushes in it, but it didn't help, so we just replaced the starter generator, and now it starts much better. It does have some issues starting, but it's not terrible. Somebody had worked on it, and they put the blower housing on incorrect. You can see how the fins are facing up, and they should be facing forward. It is going to be getting on time to be doing a service on it, so I probably will do it while it's in here, but the main reason we brought this in the shop today is for this. We're going to be adding in an electric linear actuator to do the dumping for us. So we'll basically be taking off this hardware here, which we can see originally this latch here was supposed to be straight up and down like this, and it's cocked off to the side. So you can see how it's angled just a little bit. Let me see if I can get directly off. So because of that, it doesn't latch properly. It causes it a few premature dumps, especially if there's weight hanging over the hinge area. So the center of gravity is back further, it will automatically dump when you don't want it to. So we're going to address that. We don't even need those latches anymore once we install this linear actuator. So that's going to be what we do to this. This will probably be a multi-part video because this will take a while. I do have a couple of different ways I think I might do it. I know I'm going to probably put the linear actuator off to this side, because when it's closed all the way, there's not enough clearance between the top of the starter generator and the bottom of the box. This cross member here is probably about that far. And the linear actuator is actually much beefier than that. This particular unit actually came out of a wheelchair van, I believe. Yeah, this is a Warner Electric. See, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a part number, maybe a serial number, I'm not sure. I do know that this has a 1,500 pound actuation or a lift weight capacity. It was, like I said, it was out of a wheelchair van or a wheelchair bus or something. A handicap accessible vehicle of some sort. And now it's going to be going in my golf cart to be dumping dirt. It's a bit, there we go. All kinds of brackets on this. One more on the other side. Sorry if you guys can't see all that well. This cart is bigger than what I normally have in the shop, so room is at a premium right now. This one's going to come off nice and easy. Now once you get the last one off, you gotta watch these springs don't whack you in the face. Lucky for us, that's not a problem because they're not that tight. Now we can get the trailer hitch out of the way. I'm going to try to stay out of the camera's way. Sometimes it's just not possible to do. There's one. I'm taking the inside bolts off because they're the easiest to get to. The other ones I don't really care about, so we'll just leave them there. It's unusual for that to be that easy. I think there's a couple more bolts holding this on, so let's take a look. Alright, so it looks like we have two more bolts here. One there, and one there. We'll get those out of there and we should be good to go. Where the hell am I at? Try this. Oh. Holy crap! This might be getting cut off with the torch. Alright, before we go to torch, use our impact. Okay, that's much better. Okay. Ooh, that's all corroded in there. Okay, that's basically it. There's really nothing wrong with that hitch, it's just in the way. And not really needed on this cart, so we take it off. Alright, now I'm going to unhook that rod that holds the box up and see if it'll let me tip it all the way back. Remove the cotter pin, flat washer. I don't know if this is going to actually come out easily on that end. Let's take this end off instead. Basically no going back now. Cotter pins are no good, so they'd have to be replaced with new ones. Yeah, okay. Good. That rod is no longer needed. Alright, so now I got the box lifted up. This is going to give me a lot more working room now, so I'll be able to actually get in here and measure stuff up and everything. I have an idea of what we're going to do with this actuator. I have it fully extended. Okay, and if I mount it right about here, it'll reach all the way up to the top of the box here, fully extended, basically putting the box almost 100% 90 degrees vertical. As you can see, it's pretty straight up and down. And I have these parts here left over from my stabilizer kit for my RV, so I think I might use these. I'll notch this part out so that it's open, and I'll bolt it right here, and I think that'll give me a nice mounting location for the bottom of the actuator. And then I could actually do the same exact thing up here, since it fits almost perfectly in that slot. I think it'll work pretty good that way. We'll have to see what happens. If it doesn't work up here, I'm going to have to figure something else out, but it fits so nicely in that slot, it's almost a waste. But if it doesn't fit, we can do a single, I don't know, we'll have to figure it out. We got to see what it's going to let me do and where it's going to let me mount it before I can really dive into figuring out that end. I first want to get it mounted down bottom here and get everything lined up. The biggest thing is I got to make sure the actuator clears this area here, doesn't hit the shock tower, which I don't think it will. Because if it lands right in here, just above the belts and the clutches, I think we'll be okay, because it'll start here and angle down, and it'll just clear that, and it won't hit the belts, the clutches, and the starter generator. So we should be okay with that. It's just this planning process can be a little tricky, especially when it's not designed for it. This is a very large linear actuator. I believe it has an 18-inch stroke. I mean, it's a very, very big actuator. But it was the biggest one I could get at the time that had the strongest lifting force or push and pull force that were basically equal. So, and the price was right. I think I got it for like 80 bucks. Couldn't beat that, considering the new ones are well over $300 for that same capacity. All right, let's get to it. It's another rainy day in PA. All right, so I got these two pieces modified. You can see I cut the top out. So now this hole here I added. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these two bolt holes here. There's one under my finger. There's one here. They'll get bolted to the frame of the cart like that. And then that'll be the bolt I run through that mounts to the actuator itself. And then I just cut the top off. I basically figured it out. It was going to land right about here. So we can install this thing right there. And that's going to give us plenty of clearance. Alright, that gut feeling told me to drill another hole, so that's why I put a third one there in the center. This will just allow me to mount this lower. Alright, so I might have to actually drill a new hole, because I put that hole in the wrong spot. But that's alright, I ain't worried about it. Basically right about there-ish. Alright, I want to get that hole drilled first because that is much thicker aluminum. I always want to drill a pilot hole first when drilling any type of metal. Makes it a lot easier and you don't kill your drill bits. Alright, for this we're going to use some of the old bolts too that were left. I have some 3/8 here. This is going to be tricky to get to because it's behind this plastic shroud. Alright, so it's started. That's all we need to worry about. I've made these holes bigger than what bolt I'm going to put into it. And I did that so there's at least some play. I really don't want this actuator to be super tight inside that, so it has some room to flex. Alright, just for a placeholder, that's not going to be my... Alright, so I just noticed my first problem, which is now my actuator won't rotate, so I have to spread those out a little bit because the nut on the bottom of the actuator is large. Joys of fabrication. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Well, that certainly sucks. Now that looks like it was the seam welded side of that square tube. And it's not a very good seam weld. Okay, breaking out the welder. Alright, so this isn't going to work. Alright guys, so none of my ideas came to fruition or would work because those pieces were just too small for the task I was trying to make them perform. So what I'm going to do is, basically I just made my own. Here's one of the new brackets. As you can see, this is basically just a 2-inch square welded seam tube. There you go. Alright, so I took some of this stuff. I took a 2.5-inch piece off, roughly thereabouts. But this is going to be the bottom piece. I have to drill 2 holes here, or at the very least 1 hole, and then 1 hole here, and 1 hole here, and that's going to basically be the bolt that goes through the holds the bottom of the actuator. This will be the part that mounts to the bottom frame and holds the base of the actuator. So now when the actuator comes up, it'll have enough clearance where it can stand almost 90 degrees, which will be really nice. We have got a working prototype here. So you can see here is the bracket. I have it bolted. I've made 2 additional holes. There's a high and a low setting, so I could take that bolt out and I could raise it up a notch if I need to. But it looks like this is going to work out pretty good. The actuator actually swings perfectly now. It's not spaced, it's not bolted in permanently, it's just kind of flopping there. So, but this is just for proof of concept. And I have it fully extended. You can see it goes all the way up to the frame now and it stops. I'll weld the bracket in right here and I'll have a pivot point on it. So when this is near fully extended, it will stop and I don't have to go all the way fully extended if I don't want to. Which I won't really have to because the box is basically going to be at like almost 90 degrees to the frame, so we're gonna just go with this. I think this is gonna work out nicely. I should have did this in the beginning, but I didn't. I was trying to, reuse. Okay, so here's the bracket that I just made up. This is gonna be the part that actually gets welded to the underside of the box. You can see it's just a piece of square channel that I drilled 2 holes in. This will accept the bolt for the actuator. This part here is going to weld onto the U channel or C channel on the bottom side of the box. You can see it's just a really simple design, and then this is all notched and cut out to accept the rod that comes up. So when it's in there, the rod will be in here like this, and then as the box lowers, it will be able to pivot without obstruction. So, and it still retains a lot of the components needed to keep it structurally rigid. I do not consider myself an expert welder by any stretch of anybody's imagination, but I do understand the basic concept and basic principles of welding. You know, make two pieces of metal melt and stick together. So I know some of you are probably professional welders and may offer some tips. That's fine, but you know, as far as unconstructive criticism, I don't really care what you think. And the way the actuator, once I lower it and get everything lined up, it will slip into there and go bolt onto them holes. I have the brackets installed and painted. There's the lower, it's painted and in place. It only needs one bolt, but here you can see where I was talking about how I did two holes. There's a lower hole, and then there's the upper. We're using the upper hole for now, so we can adjust it if need be. Yeah, overspray kind of looks like shit, but you know, it is what it is. It's a work cart, it's not meant to look pretty, and it's not getting sold ever. I'm gonna start running the wiring for the actuator, and I have a switch. A double pole, double throw switch, which we're gonna install in place of that one in the center there. Okay, here's the switch that we're gonna put in there. Have a weather cover for it. We're gonna get this one out. I'm hoping that it comes out fairly easily. Come on, stupid. There we go. Okay. It's all corroded. Okay, and you can see this is a momentary on, off, momentary on type switch. And by the factory, that's typically where these things are installed. Actually, you know what we can do? We can make this a little bit shorter. I'm not crazy about that sticking out that far. Because the weather boot has a brass cover, or a brass threadings in there, so that'll work very well to hold this in place. To me, that just looks a little better than. Okay, that is good and tight now, so there you go. And it's protected from the weather, which is nice, and it's black, matches everything else. Alright, so the way it's going to work is, if you can see the three sets of terminals on the switch, there are two terminals on the top, there's two terminals on the bottom, and then there's two terminals in the center. The way we're going to wire this is, the two center wires we're going to send out to the actuator itself. And then the other four terminals are going to be wired to the battery. The top one is going to be wired in such a way that when we flip the switch up, when we flip the switch down, that's going to put the box down. And when the bottom one will be wired in such a way that when we flip the switch up, the box will raise. Polarity is not really that important as far as which way it's hooked up to the switch or which way it's hooked up to the actuator itself. What's going to determine the importance of that is which direction do we want this to move. And for all the connections, I mean, we're just going to use one of these fuse holders, one of these inline ATC fuse holders. For the connections, all we're going to use are 12 to 10 gauge yellow male spade connectors. From the terminals off the battery, we're going to run the double spades. Okay, so this has a male, which will go on the switch, or I'm sorry, it has a female connection which will attach to the switch, and then coming off the side of it, it'll have a male connector which we can then plug in another male connector which will go to the other terminals on the switch. So I know it sounds a little confusing, so I'll just show you what we're going to do, and this will get a little bit simpler to understand once you actually see it. This is number 12 wire, or 12 gauge, 12 American wire gauge size. It's number 12, so you're probably wondering, why are we using 12 gauge wiring with the 10 gauge fuse? Well, it's just the way it is. It's just how we're going to do it. So the first one that we're going to wire up is going to be going directly to the actuator itself. And this will just be a standard female connector. And then we're just going to install it. Actually, I want to Sometimes I notice that the terminals are just not as tight as I would like them. So I always give them a little bit extra crimp to make them more secure. Hopefully this will give you an idea how I ran it. You can see here, it runs along the frame rail, it runs over this way, and then I have it running right up the back side of the frame on this side here. Nice and straight up against the frame. Now it's dark and hard to see, but then it comes right to here, and I just have to cut that excess wire loom out. And then that's where we cut the wires, and we're going to terminate them right into the actuator right now. Now the way I have the connections already set up, or at least the ones that were already set up on the actuator, is there's already spade connectors on here. There's a male on the red and there's a female on the yellow. So we're just going to repeat that. On the red we'll put the female from our harness. Like so, and it's already shrink tubed, so it's just a matter of shrinking the shrink tube. And I already have pre-installed the actuator, kinda, temporarily to the box, just to hold it in place so it doesn't get all floppy on me. Alright. There we go. Okay, that connection's made. So now, we're just going to do all test fitting right now. This is not permanent until the actuator's actually bolted in. Actuators actually. Alright. So now I'm going to cut off this extra bit here using my cable cutter. And then we'll end up zip tying a lot of this stuff here. And I still also have enough slack there, which is good. I have it slacked so it stays behind the box when it closes. Okay, so now we have enough wire here. We can begin our wire looming, which we only need a small piece because we're going to track this through the existing loom that we have. Alright, so because this wire comes from the battery, this is going to go into the top two terminals and it's going to get the double connections. The double-ended spade connector that I showed you earlier. And remember, there's no fuse yet, so there's no power here. And the reason we're going to use these connectors is so we can make a jumper wire and not have it look like crap and try to cram two wires into one splice, and I just think they look terrible when you do that, so that's the reason we're doing it this way. Okay, and then we're going to keep those auxiliary terminals facing out. Oh, that's a nice tight fit. Nice tight fit, nice crimp. So you can see how we're keeping these wires. It doesn't matter if they're on the same side or not, I mean really. And then we'll figure that part out there in a moment. Alright, so now we get to make our jumper wires, and this is where we reverse our polarity. Okay, so now we're going to jump off the red, like so. We're going to jump off the white. Very carefully push them on. Okay, so now you can see, now we have auxiliary power here. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump this one, and it's going to go to the opposite side of the other end of the switch. So white will go down to this terminal, and red will go down to this terminal. Let's trim these to length. We're going to give them a little extra so there's some room. Okay, so there's our extra wire. We're going to hang on to that because it's at least 12 inches long. It will get used for something, that's for certain. Crimp it. And then you take your red, plug it into the opposite side bottom, take your white, do exactly the same thing, and now you have a reversing polarity switch. Now we can throw a fuse in. Yeah, okay, so we're going to install a 20 amp fuse. Alright, so now you'll be able to see how this works. I have it installed. We'll get into a little bit of detail later. Let me just show you that it works. So down, we have to reverse our polarity bit. Let me unhook my welding clamp first. Okay, there you go. So now you see it's down. And you can fully extend it. It's got a little bit of a wobble to it, but that's okay. That's just due to the plate inside the hardware. So now we got to permanently attach everything. All right, so we'll reverse the polarity of the switch now. Remove the fuse. I'm actually going to just reverse the polarity of the motor so I don't have to fight with these wires. Reinstall the fuse. Alright, so now what I'll do is I'll take some black zip ties, or whatever color I have, it just happened to be what I picked up. I'll zip tie the ends of the loom, push it in on itself. Do that everywhere a loom meets a loom, or the loom ends. This will help keep it together and clean. Cut all the zip ties off, and then everywhere it ends, like this, we'll take some electrical tape and we'll go around it. We'll save time to make it look really nice. Okay, and I'll do a few final wraps. Rip the tape. So there we go. That is our switch. So here you go. You can see how we used the wire loom and wrapped up all the wiring. Goes underneath the cart. And then it travels underneath the body here and right around the frame. And then here's the battery connection. And then under the seat, this is where the two connections meet, where the battery wires come from and the electric motor. And then we have the connections here wrapped. The box comes down. And we let go, it stops. We hit up. The box goes up. That's it. That's all there is to it. So now it's an automatic dump. No more manual dump. I mean, when I had the old system on there, there was no way you can lift this box when it was full of stuff. It was just way too heavy. And this golf cart is capable of carrying quite a bit of weight. We're going to go put this cart to work now. Alright guys, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a long video. It's a very interesting vehicle. We definitely have to put some tail lights on it still and get turn signals and a horn and whatnot on it just to kind of get it a little bit more vehicle-like, I guess, more truck-like. But until next time, we'll see you in the next video.